Hey YouTube, Jesse here. I'm going to do a review of the Tyranid book. Now, for those of you who kind of watch my channel, it's not a lot of people, but if you want to go check that out and you haven't watched my channel, go check it out. The Demon review, you know, people were saying it was boring, and I'm sorry about that. We've learned our lesson on that one. That was the first time we ever did it. So, yeah, we've learned our lesson. We'll apply lessons learned in the future, like in this Codex review. If you really want to see what Chaos Demons are like, just watch our game on Friday. I'll be doing a review of that, so or a battle report, sorry, and you'll see a lot of new stuff in action. So yeah, watch that if you don't want to watch the other review, and I'm sure the reviews will show up that are better. But on this one, we're gonna do my army. Yay! First thing about Tyranids, this isn't the best book. I will say about this book is that there are good options in it. It's just that there's not a lot, and so when you bring an army, it's more oftentimes than not just going to be the same stuff over and over again. Not much difference in iteration between armies. Of course, you can bring tons of stuff for fun. There's tons of guys in this book you could bring, but they're not that good. So yeah, we'll just go over it. Overview of the Tyranids were an interesting army because the concept of them is that they're an alien bug hive mind, and so army-wide we have either Synapse creature or they have instinctive behavior. And so like the Synapse creatures, they control your little dudes, and then the guys that are subject to instinctive behavior are the mindless, worthless troops that you just throw at the enemy. And what happens is Synapse gives you Fearless, which is pretty awesome in this edition. Yeah, it gives you Fearless, and then it gives you control over your dudes, because the people that have instinctive behavior, when they're not under Synapse, they will have to take a leadership test, and if they fail, then they're either subject to their feed or lurk. And at that point, you have lost control of your army to an extent. It used to be worse, but now it's better. And I'll get to that in a second. But one rule of thumb with these guys is bring Synapse creatures. Tons of Synapse creatures. When you think you have enough Synapse creatures, add more. Always bring Synapse creatures, because those are the targets when you play this army. They are going to be sniped first. That way you lose control, and then by that point it's just easy pickings for your opponent to kill you. Now, for things that have instinctive behavior, they have either feed or lurk. Now, lurk, mostly your shooting guys have lurk. And what happens is they move towards the nearest cover. Like, you can't control that. They just move, and they'll shoot at whatever's closest, even though they can't hurt it. So, you know, there might be a tank right next to them, and then they'll have to shoot the tank even though they may not be able to hurt it. Even though there might be a unit that they can hurt right beyond it, but they can't shoot at it. Now, then there's Rage. Now, it used to be that Rage would force your guys, most of your assaulting guys have Rage, but they would have to run towards the nearest enemy, foregoing all shooting, but that's actually a rule of the feed. They cannot shoot. And but they'd have to run towards the nearest guy, and you couldn't control them. So back in 5th edition, you would just totally lose control of your whole army. I mean, the lurking guys are heading towards cover, and the feed guys are heading towards the enemy, and yeah, it was not a pretty sight. But now, in 6th edition, feed just gives you +2 to your charge, and that's actually really good. So a thing under feed you actually have control of, and you can kind of direct how you want, but then it loses Fearless. And that's really nice for most of the dudes that have feed, because like Hormagons have feed. They're our little assault guys. Their leadership is 6, and so most likely your opponent will just shoot at them, force them to take a leadership test, and they'll run away. So Synapse is the way to go. You can kind of throw in a strategy here and there to actually use feed, but no, my opinion, don't do it. So that's kind of the army overall, and then we'll go into specifics here in a second. One thing that is definitely with 6th edition with Tyranids is Tyranids can pretty much upgrade all their dudes with poison. Do it. Poison makes our guys so much more effective, because they get poison plus 4. So that means that they're going to be wounding on 4s or better all the time. And then if their strength is equal to or greater than their toughness, then they're re-rolling failed wounds, and that's just awesome. But yeah, that's just pretty much Tyranids overall. Bring Synapse creatures to control your guys, and be warned that those are your opponent's targets. He will target the Synapse creatures, because those are more than often are scary dudes, and it also provides control for your army. And then quickly, if you're interested in getting started in Tyranids, one thing to note, that this army is fun. I think this is one of the funnest armies to play. And also they're the most psychological, really, and I'll get to that in a second. But if you derive your fun from crushing your opponent and winning, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but Tyranids aren't for you. Tyranids are a challenge. You gotta be really strategic and know what can kill what, and you gotta be really good at this game to kind of make Tyranids work. And even then, you might just get totally crushed. But if you like a challenge, and yeah, Tyranids are your way to go. Alright, enough of me babbling about the army overall. Let's get into this. HQs. We have a lot of good HQ options. Our first option is the Hive Tyrant. He's a monstrous creature, 170 points, and this guy can be pretty much anything. He can be really close combat oriented, or he can be really shooty, and I mean, you pretty much can tool him however much you want. He's the most customizable in this army. He's also a psyker, so the way I run my Hive Tyrant is I always have him roll on Biomancy, because his psychic powers aren't that good. There's like one that is good, but then the others aren't. It's like, I wouldn't use that. So I just roll on Biomancy, and you can never go wrong rolling on Biomancy with Tyranids. That's the table to go. Tyranids can have Biomancy, Telepathy, and Telekinesis. Those are the ones they can take. And in general, for your Psychers, roll on Biomancy. There's one or two that's like, the other tables might be better, but it's only for those guys. Everything else, Biomancy. Way I like to run my Hive Tyrant is he can have wings and become a flying monstrous creature, and he is really our best anti-air / just best flyer. We do have another flying monstrous creature, but it's not that good, at least compared to Hive Tyrant. Hive Tyrant is just a whole lot better, and he's the only option we have against other flyers, because the other one has blast template weapons, and so those can't affect him. But I mean, like I said, I mean, he can be a walker and just be close combat. He can have wings and fly around shooting at people. There's a lot of options. He also has options to kind of support your army and help with your reserve rolls. He can do a lot. Hive Tyrant can do a lot. I'm skipping over one entry, but I wanted to talk about Tyrant Guard, because Tyrant Guard can be created to join Hive Tyrant. And what they are is pretty much meat shields. They pretty much give 2 extra wounds for each one you buy. They're 60 points a model, so it gets expensive to give these guys their guards, but it's really worth it. Tyrant Guard are toughness 6, so yeah, these guys are pretty stinking tough. And but only for the walking Hive Tyrant. If you get a flying one, then don't give them guard, because then they won't keep up with them. And the unit of Tyrant Guard really depend, like, its sole purpose is to be with Hive Tyrant. I mean, there's no other purpose really for them. One thing that's awesome is that Tyrant Guard can have Lash Whips and Bone Swords, and those are pretty awesome. Like in the new Chaos Demons Codex, the things that are the scariest are those new greater demons, like Bloodletter and Scarbrand. I think I'm pronouncing them right. They have initiative 10 or 9, and that's faster than anything we have. And Lash Whips will help you, set them down to initiative 1 so that you're attacking first, or at least attacking at the same time, or something. It just helps you, because otherwise those kinds of things will murder anything. And then Bone Swords are instant death things. They force a leadership test. And if you don't make the leadership, you die. Instant death, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, Tyrant Guard are pretty good. Moving on, the next entry is Swarmlord. I like Swarmlord. He's a badass. He's 208 points. He's really expensive, but he can also be given Tyrant Guard, and I wouldn't run Swarmlord without Tyrant Guard unless it's a really small game. And even then, at that point, I probably wouldn't run Swarmlord, but give him Guard, because he is going to be a target. He's going to be like target either number 1 or number 2 of your army for your opponent to kill. What this guy has, he has Bone Sabers, and these are uber bone swords. They cause instant death, period, and it forces whatever he's hitting against to re-roll his invul saves. So he's really good at killing demons, actually, and he's really good at killing guys with invul saves, because usually invul saves are kind of like either 50-50 or less than 50% of actually succeeding. And so if they make it, and then you're forcing them to re-roll, I don't know what the statistics are, but more likely than not, they'll fail it and be dead, because then he causes instant death. He has a 4-up invul in close combat. I wish it was all the time, but in close combat he has a 4-up invul. He has 3-up armor, so he can die, and that's why you give him Tyrant Guard, just to give him those extra wounds and keep him alive as long as possible. Now this guy, he has 4 psychic powers, but he can use 2. He has a warp charge 2. And I would run Swarmlord using the telekinesis table, and you're going for the number 2 option, the Gate of Infinity, I believe is what it's called. It's the teleporter ability, because this guy's walking wherever he goes. And one downside of the Swarmlord is that he is a purely assaulting dude in a very shooty meta right now. Like, all the armies in this edition are shooting at you, and so to have a purely assaulting dude that is obviously you're going to be your warlord, and just he's going to be vulnerable. And so what that Gate of Infinity does, it allows him to deep strike 24 inches forward, and then he's just in the middle of your opponent's lines. Now, as a universal rule, you can't assault in the first turn anyway, so but it just gets him far forward into your enemy line, and then he has a chance to get into assault and kill things. Obviously at that point he's a huge target, so you'll have to figure out, well, what kind of other distractions can I do to keep him alive. That's one thing that Tyranid armies really need to do. They have these big dudes that are target priorities for your opponent, and your opponent can take them down reliably. But what you need to do is you need to have enough of them on the field that your opponent can be like, well, wait, that guy's really menacing, I want to take him, but that guy, he's also menacing, and it just forces him to choose, and he might, mess up and try and split fire and take them both down at the same time, and then at that point, more than likely he won't. But that's one way to play Tyranids. You gotta mess up your opponent's target priorities, especially with Swarmlord. He's probably, like I said, he's target number 1 or target number 2. So yeah, he's really good, and he's got good buffs for your army. And he's a Synapse creature. Hive Tyrant and Swarmlord are Synapse creatures. Tyrant Guard are not. So they have a rule where if the either the Swarmlord or the Hive Tyrant or whoever they with dies, they'll go absolutely nuts, and that's part of the lore. So, but yeah, I do like Swarmlord. I'll probably run him at some point in the battle report very soon. Next is the Tervagon. Yeah, he's a really good choice. Tervagons can either be HQs or troops. We'll get into how they're troops in a second. Well, I'll just say it now. You can take them as troops for every group of termagants you bring. And so you can have up to 3, and so maximum Tervagons you can have are 5. There are lists that do that, and they are pretty crazy, because what Tervagons do, their main purpose is that they spawn dudes. Every turn, every one of your turns, you roll 3d6, and you spawn that many termagants. Now if you roll doubles, then that ability stops and you can't spawn anymore, but more often than not, you get a good amount of termagants spawned. And sometimes you stop turn 1 and excuse me, but most of the time you get to turn 2 at least. And if you bring multiple Tervagons, then you're just spawning termagants like crazy, and they're actually troops choices, and so that's what makes them really good. Really good. They're not the best in close combat, although if you watch my battle reports, you'll notice that my Tervagon Rex has the soul of a warrior. He just destroys things that he really shouldn't, but he does. For first things first, they can have Silent Talons or Crushing Claws. I give mine Crushing Claws all the time. Because with Smash Attacks now being a monstrous creature, it's almost like it negates the loss when you half your attacks for Smash Attacks, and all of a sudden you have all these, like, what is it? 5. It's the, no. Maximum is 6. On a charge, you have a maximum of 6 strength 10 attacks with Crushing Claws in the Assault. So that's pretty good. I really like doing that. And what this guy does, he buffs your troops. He's really troop support because if you give him Toxin Sacs, which is the poison, or you give him Adrenal Glands, which gives him Fused Charge, then he gives that to all the Termagants within 6 inches of him. And that's really nice. You're not paying for all that poison on your Termagants. It is just 10 points on the Tervagon, and then everyone around him has poison, which is pretty sweet. He's also a Psyker, 1 Warp Charge, but he can have up to 3 unit abilities. He has 1 ability of his own that's really good, Catalyst. It gives Feel No Pain. But I really like giving them all 3 and then rolling on Biomancy. I really like doing that personally. You could easily, though, just pay for Catalyst and be done with it. It'd be cheaper. But yeah, he's good. Tervagons are really good. 6 wounds. They're going to be a target priority, obviously, because especially if they keep spawning. You know, a Tervagon that stops spawning isn't much of a threat. One that still is definitely a threat. Because now with objectives and everything, troops are really important. Scoring units are really important, and you're just getting free ones from a Tervagon. Tervagons are 160 points, by the way, if I did not mention that. So it is possible to bring 5 and have a pretty decent army and give them upgrades. So that's the Tervagon. Next is the Tyranid Prime. He is your cheap troops, HQ choice. He is pretty much an uber Tyranid warrior. This guy actually has toughness 5, so he's not as weak as the warriors. A lot of times warriors are instant death because they're only toughness 4, and there's plenty of strength 8 stuff out there, but he's toughness 5. Tyranid Prime's toughness 5. And he is an independent character. We only have 2 independent characters in our entire army. And Tyranid Prime's one of them. He can join a group of anything, but he really synergizes well with warriors. Because what he does is he passes on his weapon skill and ballistic skill to warriors. And warriors actually have 1 less weapon skill, ballistic skill than him. He has a weapon skill of 6 and a ballistic skill of 4. The Tyranid Prime does. And so all of a sudden your group of warriors now has that. And that can be really devastating, especially when shooting. These guys also come with the option to have Lash Whips and Bone Swords. That can be pretty cool. It is expensive. But again, like against demons or something where they have monstrous creatures that are faster than you, that will destroy you with their crazy amounts of attacks or abilities, Lash Whips and Bone Swords are really good at taking care of them. You can also have the Death Spitter, which is pretty much our best gun that isn't like a blast template or something. And I always give them Death Spitters. Strength 5, AB5, that's a pretty good gun. You can also have Toxin Sacs, Adrenal Glands. Toxin Sacs, like I said before, give them to everybody. But Adrenal Glands, this is like the only guy that I'll give them to because he's at Strength 5 already. And so, you know, he can assault vehicles, sort of. If you give him Adrenal Glands, they become Strength 5. Or, excuse me, Strength 6, he's already Strength 5 on the charge. And so he can kind of do damage to vehicles, and that just kind of adds to his repertoire of what he can do. But like I said, it's very situation oriented. Sometimes you don't need it. He's a Synapse creature. All the HQs are Synapse, obviously. But, yes. Next one is the one that no one ever plays, the Parasite of Mortrex. I can't really comment on this guy, but he his main ability is he supports Ripper Swarms, and Ripper Swarms aren't good. I mean, they're a swarm. Swarms aren't that good. There's plenty of stuff that will kill them, and it's pretty much what the Parasite does. He is a fun guy to do because he spawns Ripper Swarms, kind of like how Tervagon spawned Tervagons. Every time he kills things or when things arrive on the board, there's a possibility that a Ripper Swarm will be created. So, I mean, that's cool, and he's a jump infantry, and he's actually our other independent character. But I mean, what hurts with him is that he's an HQ, because he's taking up a slot that could be filled with like a Hive Tyrant or a Tervagon or a Tyranid Prime or just anything. I mean, all the other guys are so much better. Bring them for fun. Like I said, I mean, everything in this book can be fun. It's just not going to be your best option if you're going for a tournament or you want to defeat your friend in a semi-competitive game. I mean, yeah. Other than that, I can't really comment on Parasite. He's a Synapse creature. And that wraps it up for HQs. So we'll be moving on to the elites.